Hello and welcome. The React version 19.2 has released recently, and in this video we will discuss about the new features which React version 19.2 has. So let's get started. So this is the official blog post by the React team, as you can see. And here, what are the new features? So we have this activity component. Then we have the useEffectEvent hook. And then we have cacheSignal for the React server component. And we have performance tracks inside of the Chrome Developer Tools React extension. And then we have some of the new DOM features, we have partial pre-rendering, and we have some of the notable changes. So let's discuss about this activity component, which is pretty interesting. So this is for the conditional rendering. So previously, you might have seen this sort of syntax if you have used React and conditionally rendered something. So this is the before, and after this activity component, we have this particular syntax. So this activity components wraps around the component which we want to render inside of the DOM, and then we have the mode, and the mode are visible and hidden, and we can toggle the mode by using the isVisibleState basically. So now you might be thinking like, hey, what is the difference and what is the benefit of using the activity component? So if we are using something like this, the default behavior is when this isVisibleState changes, then the page component renders in the DOM. Okay. But using this activity component currently right now, we can pre-render this page component and toggle the visibility of the page component if the isVisibleState changes inside of this mode. Okay, so as you can see, inside of this in React 19.2, activity supports two modes. One is visible and hidden. The hidden mode hides the children, unmounts the effects, and defers all updates until React has nothing left to work on. Okay, and the visible mode shows the children, mounts the effects, and allows updates to be processed normally. So this means you can pre-render and keep rendering hidden parts of the app without impacting the performance of anything visible on the screen. So this is the main benefit of using the activity component. Okay. All right, so this is that, and you can use activity to render hidden parts of the app that a user is likely to navigate to next, or to save the state of the parts the user navigates away from. Okay, this helps make navigations quicker by loading data, CSS, and images in the background, and allows back navigations to maintain the state such as input fields. Okay, and in future we plan to add more modes to the activity for different use cases. So currently we have only two modes, one is visible and another one is the hidden, but in the future we will definitely have more modes. Okay, all right, then we have the new hook, which is the useEffectEvent hook. Okay, so this solves a problem of the useEffect hook basically. Now the useEffect hook is quite controversial, and it is very hard to understand, and it is very hard to use the useEffect hook properly. I have seen so much of the code bases have endless amount of useEffect hook, and they are changing the state drastically throughout the application without thinking about what might be the effect of changing those states. Okay, and you might have seen something like this code here. Okay, so we more or less all have done this similar thing inside of our application. So what is happening inside of this code? So we are getting the room ID and the theme from this component, and we are assuming that room ID and the theme can change. Basically, those are some states. Okay, and inside of the use effect, we are creating a connection. Basically, it is connected to a chat room basically, and the on connection, we are showing the notification, which is showing the theme. Now, if we do this, the problem is we have to have the theme inside of the dependency array of the use effect. Okay, now this is good. We want to connect to the room whenever the room ID changes, but we don't want to connect to the room whenever the theme changes. But inside of the dependency array, we have to add the theme here. Otherwise, you will get the linting error if you are using ESLint. So one thing which you can do to avoid this sort of situation, you can just get rid of this theme and disable the linting. But this is problematic because the linter does not know anymore what are the dependencies has to be there inside of this dependency array of the use effect, which they are showing here as well. So here inside of this paragraph, they are explaining the same thing basically. The problem with the code above is that a change to any values used inside such an event will cause the surrounding effect to rerun. Okay, so whenever the room ID or the theme changes, the use effect will rerun. For example, changing the theme will cause the chat room to reconnect. This makes sense for values related to the effect logic itself, like room ID, but it doesn't make sense for the theme. To solve this issue, most users just disable the lint rule, which we all have done, I believe, and exclude the dependency. But that can lead to bugs since the linter can no longer help you to keep the dependencies up to date if you need to update the effect later. So if you want to update the use effect later, then the linter has no idea what are the dependencies should go inside of the dependency array of the use effect, and that can cause some unwanted bugs. Okay, so with use effect event, you can split the event part of this logic out of the effect that emits it. Okay, so now what they are doing here, they have extracted the show notification, which is using the theme, and wrap it around inside of the use effect event. Okay, and here they are adding this function, okay, on connected, and then whenever the user connects, they are calling this on connected function. So now if we are doing something like this, then what will happen? We no longer have to add the theme inside of the use effect dependencies array because it is not directly being used inside of the use effect. It is used inside of the use effect event. Okay, so in that way we can get around this particular problem and we no longer have to disable the linting for our code, which is awesome. That is how we are following best practices inside of our code. Okay, similar to DOM events, effect events always see the latest props and state. Effect events should not be declared in the dependency array. You will need to upgrade to like this one, the ESLint plugin React hooks version this, so that the linter doesn't try to insert them as dependencies. So you might have seen this sort of things whenever you are setting some sort of state inside of the use effect by using set state. Basically, you don't have to add the set state inside of the dependency array. We are doing something similar to that. Okay, so if we want to use the linter, then we have to just update our ESLint plugin React hooks to version 6.1.1 and above, so that the ESLint knows, okay, so this thing, the on connected, has not need to be added to this dependency array. Okay, so that the linter doesn't try to insert them as dependencies. Note that useEffectEvents can only be declared in the same component or hook as their effect. Okay, these restrictions are verified by the linter. All right, so this is the useEffectEvent hook, which is another quite new hook, and it solves a really good problem. All right, so there is a note like, hey, when to use effect event. So you should use effect event for functions that are conceptually events that happen to be fired from an effect instead of a user event. That's what make it an effect event. Okay, so if you are firing some event by clicking on a button, this is not a good place to use the use effect event. If you are using the use effect, then if you have some unwanted states inside of your use effect, then you can use the use effect event inside of your component to avoid the unnecessary or unwanted states inside of the dependency area of the use effect. You don't need to wrap everything in use effect event or to use it just to silence the lint error, as this can lead to bugs. Okay, so you do not have to wrap everything around that, and do not use the use effect event excessively. Okay, for a deep dive on how to think about event effects, see this particular blog post as well. All right, then we have the cache signal, and the cache signal is only used with the React server components, and the cache signal allows you to know when the cache lifetime is over. Now this is a new thing, and most probably you don't be using this cache signal quite often, because whenever we are using the React server components, we are using some sort of a framework, something like Next.js, and Next.js manages the cache under the hood. You don't have to worry about the cache at all. So this might be something which is applicable to the frameworks developers who are developing the framework, but this is something which you or me will not use quite often, unless or until you are using React server components and you want some granular control of the cache of the React server components which you are using. Okay, so this allows you to clean up or abort work when the results will no longer be used in the cache, such as React has successfully completed rendering, the render was aborted, the render has failed, or something like that. Okay, all right, then we have the performance tracks. The React 19.2 adds a new set of custom tracks to Chrome DevTools performance profiles to provide more information about the performance of your React app. Okay, so we have these performance profile inside of the Chrome DevTools. Okay, and we have the scheduler, and then we have some of the other things. We have the new React DOM features. We have that. So in React 19.2, we are adding a new capability to pre-render part of the app ahead of time and resume rendering it later. Okay, so this feature is called the partial pre-rendering and allows you to pre-render the static parts of your app and serve it from a CDN, and then resume rendering the shell to fill it in with dynamic content later. Okay, so there are some of the code examples here. Okay, so you can see all of them. All right, then some of the notable changes are there as well. Batching suspense boundaries for SSR. Okay, and there are some of the other things as well, like SSR web stream support for Node and so on. And then we have the ESLint plugin React hooks. As mentioned previously, if we want to use the new hook, the use effect event, we have to update our ESLint plugin React hooks to version 6.1.1 or later. Okay, all right, and then we have the update the default use ID prefix. Okay, and then we have the change log here. So these are all of the changes inside of the React version 19.2. You can check this blog post as well. I will add the link to this blog post inside of the description of the video. Okay, now as you can see, these are all of the things which we have, and the most promising ones are these two, the activity component and the useEffectEvent, which we definitely will use. And for you vibe coders, you are with no luck because many of the LLMs still do not know about these activity components and useEffectEvent. So if you want to use these new features, then you might have to do it manually. Okay, all right, so these are all of the changes in React version 19.2, which are awesome changes.